A warm glow filled the garden as fairy lights twinkled overhead. As I made my way through the crowd, I could hear laughter and conversation wherever I looked. The dish was full of canapés, looking as though it may fall at any second. The usual suspects, my college classmates, the most of whom were still unmarried and tenaciously defending their independence, were present at Lena's birthday celebration. And me, the one with the heavy stone already on my left ring finger, was me. A voice shouted behind me, "Hey, stranger!" I turned to find Lena embracing me firmly, her blonde locks bouncing. "Where have you been hiding?" I chuckled and pointed to the piled high plate, saying, "Just avoiding social butterflies. Aside from that, happy birthday. Happy birthday, gorgeous. You look amazing." Her eyes glistened as she said, "Thanks. So, where's Mr. Perfect?" Well, Adrian. His name even sounded right. It was because of him that I left the single life behind early. We had met a few months prior at a friend's get-together, and I must admit it resembled something from a corny romance book. As we looked at each other across the room, the music stopped and we were left alone. He said, "Hey," his lips moving into a self-assured smile. "I don't believe we've ever met. Adrian is who I am." "I'm Maya," I said, with butterflies in my stomach. "Nice to meet you." We spoke for hours about everything and nothing that night. Unlike any person I'd ever met, he was unique. He had a clear idea of his future self at the age of 27, a family, a profession, the entire 9 yards. It was a welcome change from the Peter Pans around me who were terrified of commitment. At one point, his stare was fierce as he proclaimed, "I want kids. A whole bunch of them, and I wouldn't mind changing a single diaper." My heart leaped for joy. For me, having children was also a must. Being the only kid, my childhood fantasies were of a house full of small people and laughing. "Me too," I said, a sincere smile lighting across my face. A seldom found. That concluded everything. In the murky seas of dating, we were a rare pair who were on the same page. Our partnership took off right away. Dates became weekend trips, which became evenings spent watching movies together on his sofa. Adrian greeted me warmly and showed me around his family, who were a close-knit group. Susan, his mother, was very cozy. "Maya, family is everything," she would add, her eyes sparkling. "A woman's place is with her children, nurturing them, helping them grow." I have to admit that I agree. A year later, beneath the glow of the park lights, Adrian proposed with a straightforward diamond ring. My eyes filled with tears and I said, "Yes." Our little family-only wedding was lovely and tiny. After the honeymoon, things got serious. Ever the pragmatic, Adrian recommended that I remain at home and concentrate on raising our future children in a loving atmosphere. He would squeeze my hand and tell me to think of it as an investment. "I'll provide for the family. You concentrate on becoming the most amazing mother ever." The next 6 months passed in a blur of doctor's visits, 3 a.m. pickle and ice cream cravings, and never-ending discussions about baby names. The great day. Adrian was overjoyed. He bragged, "Paul's knocked up," pretty much telling everyone we encountered that we're expecting a small heir. His insistence on an heir always bothered me a little bit, but I ignored it, concentrating instead on the wonder that was developing inside of me. The big day finally came. After pushing for hours, there was quiet followed by a chorus of cries, both mine and the baby's. My finger was caught by a small, flawlessly wrinkled hand. I felt a wave of relief that was so strong it hurt. With a pleasant voice, the doctor declared, "It's a girl." There was a beat of quiet. My heart fell. Adrian then lumbered over, disappointment plastered on his face. It seemed unbelievable to me. While I was cradling our lovely daughter, feeling both fatigued and excited, Adrian could only manage an expression that suggested he had lost the championship game involving his beloved team. "A girl," he finally said in a flat, unexcited voice. "Well, there's always next time for a boy, right?" My heart grew heavier. I said, "Next time." With a shrug, he looked away from our daughter who was curled up in my arms. "Indeed, as you well know, we must have an heir. I have to continue the family name." I feigned a laugh. "We have an heir," I remarked, guiding him in the direction of the infant. "Observe her, Adrian. She is flawless." He nodded somewhat, but his gaze did not change. My in-laws, fortunately, told a different tale. Susan jumped into grandma mode as soon as she lay eyes on her granddaughter Grace. She cooed at her, fussed over her, and lavished her with plush animals and little outfits. "A petite damsel," she said, grinning. "Just what this family needs." Adrian remained cool toward Grace at first. His gaze would frequently wander to some far, invisible location as he would hold her awkwardly. He used to say things like, "What a lovely blossom. You have to handle her delicately. Alternatively, it's unfortunate that she can't act a little rough and tumble like a boy." Every comment gnawed away at my happiness. Was it unreasonable of me to hope that my spouse would adore our daughter, gay or straight? However, the reality was revealed a year later when the physicians verified that I would not be able to conceive any more children because of health issues. Adrian's disillusionment transformed into something more sinister, an enduring stream of animosity that seeped into our existence. Like ice cream melting on a sweltering summer day, 8 years flew by. My tiny miracle, Grace, grew into a bright, self-reliant youngster. She had a mind sharper than a chef's knife at 8 years old. She loved gadgets, could cook better than most adults, and her French was as smooth as a bubbling stream. She had prepared a 3-course French feast for her grandparents, Susan and George, only a week prior. With wide eyes and tantalizing taste buds, they sat there while Grace proudly displayed each dish. Susan said, wiping her lips with a tissue, "Grace, this is amazing. You're a natural." A guy of few words. George just nodded yes, but the sparkle in his eyes spoke more than words could. She won another prize the same week, this one for the junior high school competition's most delectable handmade food. Adrian was not deterred. His meek congratulations was followed by his typical retreat into the den, where he would enter whenever Grace's accomplishments seemed to be taking center stage. Tears filled Grace's large brown eyes as she constructed a grand Lego castle on the living room floor one evening. "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy seem happy about my stuff?" She sniffed, her bottom lip quivering. My heart hurt. This was hardly a novel concept. For years, Adrian's disregard for Grace had been a source of irritation for me. I used to ignore it, reasoning that he wasn't very adept at showing affection. However, a powerful protectiveness shot through me when I saw Grace's brilliant eyes clouded with confusion. "Hey, sweetie," I said as I bent down to give her a hug. "It's nothing to worry about. Your father adores you much. He just doesn't know how to express it, to put it mildly." Once Grace had fallen asleep that evening, I went up to Adrian. He was leaning back on the couch and glancing through sports channels as a beer teetered on the coffee table. "Adrian," I remarked in a frustrated tone of voice, "we need to talk about Grace." His demeanor was a mix of defensiveness and irritation as he glanced at me. "Observe," he uttered in a rough voice. "I give it my all, okay? I provide a roof over her head and pay the bills. Is that not sufficient?" "She is desperate for your acceptance and encouragement," I replied, my voice quivering with rage. "The least you can do is pretend to be interested." Adrian let out a deep, long sigh that seemed to engulf the entire space. "All right," he whispered. "I'll try, but don't expect miracles." Adrian and Grace's communication over the next few days was tight. Though with a false civility that made me uncomfortable, he would question her about school. However, it like seeing a bear attempt to waltz. The months blended together. Adrian's attempts to develop a close relationship with his daughter diminished and were replaced with a cold civility. However, he was starting to have strange late nights. After nightfall, smelling strongly of perfume that wasn't mine, he began to trickle in. His lame explanations included business meetings, being late, and highway traffic congestion. Every justification seemed like a blow to the face. I made the decision to approach him one evening while Grace was sound asleep and the clock was getting closer to midnight. With a smug smile on his face, he walked in the door, exhausted but confident. I said, "There you are," in a voice tense with repressed rage. "Have you been somewhere? All night long, Grace has been inquiring about you." He gave me a patronizing glance. He said, "Look, honey," his annoyance evident in his voice. "It's okay, I carry the bacon home. You spend the entire day sitting here. What real-world knowledge do you possess?" My teeth tightened. This man had the gall to shove it back in my face, the same man who had recommended I become a housewife. The days that followed were a tight waltz between boiling fury and stillness. Adrian withdrew even further and spent an increasing amount of time away from his house. He even began to dress differently, donning more fashionable attire and exuding a haughty demeanor that annoyed me. His hair has also altered to a more modern cut that appeared to be intended to remove years from his face. Going for a new look, huh? One morning, unable to suppress my curiosity, I made a comment. He gave me a toothy smile, the type he no longer gave me. He muttered, "Work thing," dodging my stare. There was a great weight to the falsehood. With a grin on her face and a crumpled piece of paper in her fingers, Grace virtually bounced into the home one day. She chirped, bouncing on the balls of her feet, "Mommy, guess what?" My pride grew within me. My tiny genius had a talent for gathering accolades. What was it this time? Another victory in a coding competition, a flawless grade in a scientific course. "What is it, sweetie?" I took the paper, knelt before her to ask. "I've won the school's Mind Games championship," she said, her pleasure visible in every word. "I'm the smartest child in my grade," they said. I sprang with pleasure and gave her a bare embrace. "Grace, it is incredible. I have faith in your ability." We should have celebrated this win. However, what? A classy dinner, a visit to a theme park. Those choices seemed so trite for a brain as sharp as Grace's. That afternoon, when Grace got out of her coding session, I had an idea. Yes, I gave her a sleek, brand-new smartphone as a surprise when she was 8 years old. When she opened the gift, her eyes sprang wide with surprise. "A new phone. Mommy, a phone for me." "For you," I said, confirming with a wink of the lips. "You've worked so hard, and I think this could be a great way for you to explore your interests even more." With a sense of reverence, she grasped the phone and traced the smooth surface with her fingertips. She took pictures, edited them using built-in filters, and even downloaded a few educational applications once she quickly learned how to use it. "I'm grateful, Mommy." She threw her arms around me and shouted, "This is the best gift ever." A stab of remorse shot through my chest. Adrian would not stop talking about how I was pampering Grace. This would not even somewhat please him. However, Grace's happiness muffled that voice. "Just promise me one thing, okay?" I said, keeping my eyes on her. "Don't discuss the phone with Daddy. He may become enraged." Grace, the ever-loyal daughter, gave a sincere nod. "Mommy, my lips are sealed. This is our little kept secret." After a week, a sliver of optimism appeared in our tense home, but it was as fleeting as a firefly in the night. For the first time since he started his late-night routine, Adrian brought up Grace in conversation. Not simply a cold, "How was school?" but an actual effort to establish a connection. One evening, he threw a faded baseball cap on the table and said, "Hey, Em, would you be interested in joining me this weekend for a camping trip? Just the two of us. By the campfire, we may bake marshmallows and tell spooky stories." Grace had a Christmas light-like glow in her eyes. "Are you serious? Simply the two of us?" "Yeah," Adrian said with a tad of discomfort. "Figured it's about time we bonded. You and your old man." My gut constricted with a knot of fear. I shuddered to think of Grace going into the woods with Adrian, a man who couldn't tell a compass from a calendar. But Dad, what about things like bears? Don't the mountains harbor wild creatures? Adrian chuckled, a humorless sound. Kiddo, don't worry. I'll keep you safe from any wolves or bears that happen to sniff around. My chest throbbed with my heartbeat. The entire concept of going camping seemed like a bad one. Nevertheless, the words died in my throat as I saw Grace's delight sparkle in her eyes. They packed their backpacks for the weekend. A little flicker of optimism clashed with a worried flutter in my gut. Perhaps, just possibly, this journey might serve as the link they needed to strengthen their bond. As Sunday night came to an end, a dull grey sky covered the sky, reflecting the mounting sense of dread within me. With a panicked look on his face, Adrian stammered through the door by himself. "Maya," he said in a raspy voice, "I have something I must tell you. Grace is here. I let her go." The entire world was skewed. Lost her. My voice was just a whisper as I echoed, "What do you mean, you lost her?" He raised his head, begging with red-rimmed eyes. "She got lost when we were trekking in the mountains. I looked everywhere and yelled for her, but..." My anger shot through me, burning brightly. "You just got home, too. Why didn't you make a police report?" "I was scared," he said, his voice breaking. "Scared they'd think." "Think what?" I yelled, a terrible calm permeating my voice. "That you're a neglectful father who lost his own daughter." Tears poured down his cheeks, but they didn't really put out the fire that was burning within of me. I said, "I'm calling the police," and picked up the phone. "They can start searching right away." After making a panicked phone call, sirens could be heard far away, serving as a glimmer of hope amid the approaching darkness. When my in-laws showed up, their worried expressions were hard to get through to me because I was still so terrified. With every minute that passed, the excruciating wait continued to drag on forever. With his phone tightly gripped in his palm and his eyes fixed on the screen, Adrian was snuggled up on the couch. I was watching him when my blood pressure shot up. A smoldering wrath was concealed by a distant composure. This wasn't a real concern. This wasn't a worry. It was something completely different. I felt a shockwave go through me. Grace's mobile phone. Grace's phone. I let out a scream as the revelation hit me like a blow to the face. She owns a GPS-equipped phone. Adrian's expression became colorless. His phone fell to the ground with a crash, showing a text exchange full with adorable emoticons. Disregarding the nauseating churn in my stomach, I reached for my phone and called Grace. It went unanswered. With shaky palms, I held onto a frail hope that was eroded by each unanswered ring. With a sense of renewed urgency in their voices, I informed the search team of the information. "I'm hoping that little phone, which represents my alleged excess, will be the key to getting Grace back home." An hour turned into what seemed like an eternity. The tense stillness was broken by a crackling of static on the walkie-talkie. "We found her," a voice, hoarse with relief, said. "She is secure and unharmed." A few moments afterward, the front door exploded, showing a team of rescuers with a little bundle that seemed to be Grace. Grace's face was covered in fatigue and filth, but she was alive and well. With tears running down their faces, my in-laws wrapped their arms around her. I tucked my face into her hair and participated in the embrace. My spirit was soothed by the aroma of fresh air and pine needles. Upon eventually drawing away, I saw Grace's lovely brown eyes. "Why didn't you answer your phone, sweetheart?" With a rich, emotional voice, I questioned. With a tinge of rebellion in her little voice, she shrugged. She said, "I was afraid it would die, so I just stayed put and waited for them to find me on the GPS thing." At the age of 8, she is already exhibiting a level of intelligence that surpasses even her father. I looked at Adrian, who was standing uncomfortably off to the side, like a ghost at his own daughter's homecoming celebration, and felt a pang of shame that quickly turned into a fury. "Well, aren't you going to say something?" My voice filled with hatred, I spat. "Hey, sweetie, welcome home. I'm relieved that you are no longer wandering in the woods." Adrian winced at what I said, but said nothing. Sensing my hostility, Grace wriggled free of my hug and moved in his direction. "Daddy," she murmured in a quiet yet distinct voice, "why did you leave me all alone in the mountains?" A thin, phony smile spread across Adrian's lips. With a strained voice, he said, "Just a little test, champ. See how brave you are." Grace, who was 8 years old, showed wisdom beyond her years. Her head was cocked, her eyes fixed. "No," she clarified. "You left me on purpose." Adrian let out a strangled laugh. "Kiddo, stop being so dumb. Why would I act in such way?" "Because you don't like me," she said matter-of-factly, her tone without any reproach. "You never wanted me." My throat heightened each breath. The unadulterated and bare truth loomed large in the atmosphere. Adrian's cheeks turned red. Like an animal in a corner, his eyes darted all around the room. "That's not true," he blustered, desperation evident in his voice. "You're just a stupid kid making stuff up." Grace snapped back, her little form bristling with indignation. "Don't call me stupid." Ever the broker of peace, Susan stepped in. "Adrian, that's enough," she yelled in an unexpectedly harsh tone. "Let Grace speak." Adrian started to object, but his father's withering gaze cut him down. George murmured, "Grace, darling," in a soft voice. "Can you tell us what happened?" With her grandfather's encouragement, Grace felt more confident and took out her phone, the very one I had given her as a covert present. "I have proof," she said, her voice booming with self-assurance. A couple touches on the screen brought a woman's voice into the space. It cooed into the phone, all sweet and enticing. Grace had taped the talk rather skillfully. "You're fine, honey," the voice said. "We'll be together soon. Simply get rid of her for good." My face started to bleed. The sound of my heart thumping against my chest contrasted with the icy quiet that ensued. "What? What is this?" My voice was almost a whisper as I stuttered. My father-in-law turned to confront Adrian, a look of frustration mixed with rage. "What does this mean, son?" Confronted and vanquished, Adrian fell to his knees. His face was dripping with tears. The painstakingly built facade came apart, exposing the ugly truth. He revealed all of his secrets, including a vile story of a desperate relationship and vicious ambition. He disclosed that his mistress was expecting his son, the inheritance he had always desired. She would not marry him, however, not while he was married to someone else and had a kid whose alimony payments would deplete his savings. They had devised an evil scheme to get rid of Grace, the thing preventing them from achieving their goal. A raw, merciless beast of fury screamed through me. The man who had held my hand at the altar and with whom I had lived my life was actually a monster. When I defined my voice, it was a low growl. I spat out "police," reaching for my phone. With a desperate tone in his words, Adrian surged at me. "Please, Maya, you're not comprehending." From a distance, the siren's sorrowful cries announced the arrival of justice, although a bit late. Adrian fell to the ground as the police stormed into the home. His cries for forgiveness were ignored. The weeks that followed were a haze of court hearings, lawyer conferences, and police interviews. Grace stood her ground. Bless her noble heart. She described what had happened in the mountains, exposing her father's brutality with a steady, firm voice. The cornerstone of the prosecution's case was the tape found on her phone, which attested to his heinous scheme. The media went crazy about the trial. With painted nails and a heart as frigid as ice, Adrian and his mistress pointed fingers at one another in an attempt to assign blame. But against the weight of the evidence, their falsehoods were as thin as tissue paper. Slow as it was, justice eventually won out. Adrian was found guilty of attempting to kill his mistress. The judge, a hard-bitten lady with cold, steely eyes, gave them a heavy punishment. Years in prison would be their punishment, but it was a tiny price to pay for the horrific deed they had planned. It was a hollow win in terms of monetary recompense. The terror that had suffocated me during the excruciating hours following Grace's abduction was a scar that money could never heal. However, it was a symbolic penalty that served as a reminder of the life that they had so ruthlessly attempted to put out. Adrian's own family delivered what was maybe the most gratifying blow. George and Susan officially rejected their son, with expressions of deep disappointment on their cheeks. Their steadfast support was a comfort to our hurting hearts as they stood by Grace and me. The ghosts of the past followed Grace and me as we went. It wasn't simple. My sleep was being torn apart by dreams. However, as the day brightened, and as he laughed with Grace, the darkness grew lighter. A mother's love is passionate and unyielding, and it can overcome even the most horrific betrayals. I realized this as I held Grace close, her little body warmth serving as a beacon of hope.